Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Reed and this is lesson 9.3, special right triangles. Our objective for today, I can express the sides of a 45-45-90 triangle or a 30-60-90 triangle with simplified radicals. Isosceles right triangle, 45-45-90 triangle. In an isosceles right triangle, if the legs have length L, then the hypotenuse has length L square root of 2. So if you look at the figure here, the triangle, we have the two side lengths. So across from the 45 is the leg, across from the 45 is the leg, and then across from the 90 is L square root of 2. So whatever the leg length is times the square root of 2. So now we're going to go ahead and apply that here. Find the length of each hypotenuse on the isosceles right triangles. Write them in exact simplified form. So we noticed that for the first one, the two leg lengths are 1. So the hypotenuse length would be 1 square root of 2. So go ahead and try to do the other 3. Just take a minute and do those 3, please. All right, so then we would have 2 square root of 2, 3 square root of 2, and 4 square root of 2. Some practice problems here. Solve for the unknown. Write each solution as the exact value. So looking at the first one, we have the 90-degree angle, which means this is 45 and this is 45 because it's an isosceles triangle, so those two angles are congruent. So that means this is the leg length and this is the leg length. So this would be leg square root of 2. So then we know that A equals the leg length, which is 72, square root of 2. So A equals 72 times the square root of 2. All right, looking at this next one, we have the 90-degree angle. These two angles are both 45 because it's an isosceles triangle. So this is the leg length, leg square root of 2. So that tells us that B is 13 because it's in the spot where L is, so we know B is 13. All right, next one, we have the 45 and the 90, so this is also 45, so then we know these are congruent to each other, so this side length is 8, and then across from the 90-degree angle would be 8 square root of 2. This next one is a little bit tricky. We need to figure out what the leg length would be. They gave us the hypotenuse length without a square root, but we know that this hypotenuse length here is supposed to be the leg times the square root of 2. So I'm going to do 10 equals L square root of 2, and then I'm just going to solve for L. So I would draw a line. Square root of 2 is just multiplying by that, so I can divide by the square root of 2 on both sides. So the leg length will equal 10 divided by the square root of 2. That's going to be okay for our purposes for right now. Normally we would not allow a square root in the bottom, but if you did the decimal of that, you would have the same thing as if we did it without a square root in the bottom. So that is perfectly acceptable for right now. 10 divided by the square root of 2, 10 divided by the square root of 2. All right, this next one is also a little bit tricky. They again gave us the hypotenuse, so we know that 16 equals the leg times the square root of 2. So to solve for the leg length, which in this case is x, we would divide by the square root of 2. So then the leg length equals 16 divided by the square root of 2. So 16 divided by the square root of 2 for here and here. Take a minute and go ahead and do this last one, please. Figure out what the hypotenuse length would be. All right, so you should have noticed it's isosceles. So that means this is 45 and this is 45 if we already have a 90 there. And then this is the leg length. So this is the leg square root of 2. So we just plug in 12, so it's 12 square root of 2. All right, one more special type of right triangle. a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So the conjecture states that in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, if the shorter leg has length A, then the longer leg has length A times the square root of 3. So that would go right here. And the hypotenuse has length 2 times A. 2A. All right, so investigation 2. Find the length of each missing side of the 30, 60, 90 triangles. So in the first one, we see that across from the 30, we have 1. That's in the spot where A is. So now next we can look at across from the 90 if we wanted. Across from 90 should be 2 times A. So we would do 2 times 1, which is 2. And then across from the 60 would just be A times the square root of 3. And A is 1, so it'd be 1 square root of 3. So the next one, we look across from the 30, we have A. That's really all we need here. So then across from the 90 is 2A, so 2 times 2 will give us 4. Across from the 60 is A square root of 3, and our A value is 2, so it'd be 2 square root of 3. So go ahead and take a minute and try to do the next 2 triangles, please. All right, so in this next one, A is 3. So then we would have 6 and 3 square root of 3. Then we have A is 4, so it would be 8, and then 4 square root of 3. All right, so we have some practice problems here. We need to solve for the unknown, write each solution as the exact value. So we have 90 and 60, which means this is 30, which means across from 30 we have our A value, and across from the 90 we have 2 times A, and across from the 60 we have A square root of 3. And then it actually gave us A to find, so you could just pretend that's X if that's easier for you. We know that A equals 5, so then up here we would have 5 times 2. So we get 10. And then for the B value, we know that A is 5, so it'd be 5 square root of 3. All right, so for the next one, we have 30 and 90, which means this is 60. Across from the 30 is our A value. So if it helps, you can write them in. A across from 90 is 2A, and then across from 60 is A square root of 3. So then we can see our A value is 17. So this side over here is 17, which means this would be 17 times 2. So we get 34. All right, so take a minute and try to do these next 2. All right, so across from the 30 is A, across from the 90 is 2A, and then across from the 60 is A square root of 3. So we're going to go ahead and find the 2 missing side lengths. We know that the only information they gave us was the 2A, so that means 14 equals 2A. So to solve for A, you would divide by 2 on both sides. So A equals 7. So then this side is 7, and then this side would be 7 square root of 3. All right, over here across from the 30, we would have A, and across from the 90 is 2 times A, and across from the 60 is A square root of 3. So we know that 2A equals 8, so that means A must equal 4, because if we divided by 8 divided by 2, we would get 4. So then this side down here is 4, and this side over here would be 4 square root of 3. All right, these next 2 are a little bit tricky, so let's go ahead and label our figures. So across from the 30 is A, across from the 90 is 2A, and then A square root of 3. So all we know is that A square root of 3 equals 12. So let's solve for A. we would divide by the square root of 3 on both sides. So a equals 12 divided by the square root of 3. So that is what goes across from 30, because that's what a equals. So 12 divided by the square root of 3 goes here. And now we need to figure out y still, which is just 2 times a. So we do 2 times 12 divided by the square root of 3, which is just 2 times 12. So 24 divided by the square root of 3. That's a times there. So then this side here is 24 divided by the square root of 3. And that was that one. All right, this next one, we're going to start off by just labeling the degrees inside. So if I look at the bigger triangle, I have 30 and 90, which means this is 60. So then I would have across from the 30, this is a, so a is 4. And so then across from the 90 would be 4 times 2, so we would have 8. And then across from the 60 would be a square root of 3, so 4 square root of 3. So we just did this triangle here. Now we need to use this triangle here, but to figure out what the degrees are, we need to look at this whole big triangle, because I see I have 90 and 30, which means this part right here is 60. And we have 90 there, so then this is 30. All right, so to make this a little bit easier on us, I just drew that triangle out separate so that I don't run out of room. And let's see, we know that this is 4. All right, so across from the 30, we would have a. Across from the 90 is 2a. And across from the 60 is a square root of 3. So the only information we have so far is that a square root of 3 equals 4. So we're going to solve for a, so we know what a is. Divide by the square root of 3 on both sides. So a equals 4 divided by the square root of 3. So that's right here. 4 divided by the square root of 3. So that's what x equals. 4 divided by the square root of 3. And now to figure out what 2a equals, we just do 2 times a, which is 4, divided by the square root of 3. 2 times 4 is 8, divided by the square root of 3. So 2a equals 8 divided by the square root of 3. So 8 divided by the square root of 3. There, that looks more like a 3. So most of the problems you will encounter are going to be a lot simpler. They're not going to necessarily be like these 2 problems we had at the end that were super tricky. But if you do encounter a tricky problem, that's how you would go about solving it. As always, reach out for any assistance that you might need. And this concludes our lesson 9.3.